Thank you all for joining in. Today, we're going to be talking to you about remote work. And my name is Jason Goodman. I manage content and product marketing here at Resilio. And we've also got Josh Sargent, who's going to be doing most of the speaking. And he's our VP of Partnerships and Sales. And also with us today is John Redmond. And John is on our customer engineering team, and he's going to actually be driving a live demo towards the end of the presentation. So with that, let's just get right into it. What are we going to talk about today? I'm going to give you a brief overview on Resilio. We're going to talk about some of the challenges with remote work specifically. We're going to get you a quick overview on Resilio Connect. So just to clarify, this webinar is on Resilio Connect. It's not about Resilio Sync. And then we're going to go into what are the use cases within remote work and what are we seeing customers doing with the product. We'll do a live demo, and then we'll take your questions as they come in. So with that, let's move on to the next slide. Thanks, Josh. So Resilio, let's talk about who we are, what we do a bit, and how customers are using us. And I think, at the most fundamental level, we have this software that runs on any device, practically on popular operating systems, that makes it extremely easy and reliable and efficient to move data, bulk data sets, files across any type of network. And we're going to talk about what some of the benefits are, in the context of remote work. But we have customers, Josh, if you want to move on to the next slide, customers across the board doing various different types of things. And, remote work is one very popular use case, especially recently, but we also have customers on the extreme edge who are using, very unreliable uplinks, VSAT, 3G, 4G, 5G, you name it, fast broadband. And part of the value that Resilio brings to the table is being able to get that data where it needs to be across any type of network. So we've got customers in maritime, you're seeing here, restaurant services, numerous customers in media and entertainment and gaming doing build distribution. And, one of the things I just want to talk about before we dive into it is who we are, what we do. And Resilio really came into this space with the mission to build the best sync product for the enterprise. But that mission has really expanded and morphed. And it's really about how do you move data reliably, predictably, and rapidly and at scale. And I think we have all these different customers doing different things, but I think if there's three things that tie them all together, one is all of our customers place tremendous value on their data, high value assets. And they really think of their workflows as mission critical, and they've got to keep the data they're flowing and accessible to users using whatever type of network, infrastructure, storage they happen to have available, or in some cases, moving off to the cloud. And I think a second thing that they really all share is they all value predictability. I don't think this can really be understated. The idea that, you need your data has to be there on time, all the time, and it's mission critical. So having some predictable way to get access to your data is really important. And I think that there's a couple examples in here, one in the M&E space, we've got this really cool customer, 7 Wonder Studios, that I've worked with personally doing a video for Resilio to promote what we're doing. And they just have, what they really value is this tremendous flexibility. They can send editors on location, they're taking footage, they're always changing where the location is. They can grab the footage and they've got the flexibility to either immediately sync it with the network that they're connected to, wait till they get back to a hotel or some other Wi-Fi, and then get the updates and changes out to where they need to be. They happen to be using, both the cloud, Wasabi, for like long-term storage, but they also have their workflow really built around the home, a remote office as well. Another example is just in gaming, where we have these amazing gaming customers who have really started out using us as part of their build distribution workflows, where as they're iterating and basically creating artifacts. They've got multiple contributors building these games. The ability to take a build, part of their DevOps workflow and pipeline, and then distribute it at scale to hundreds and potentially thousands of other contributors and endpoints, and do that in a fixed time frame is a huge benefit to them. One of our customers said to me, it's just, it's all about scalability, and Resilio is our favorite vendor to work with. And it feels really good to hear those kinds of things. So I think, there's one other thing I want to mention. I think the third thing is really what customers share is there's a transformational aspect to what they do with our software. And I think Skywalker Sound is a great example of that, where, when the pandemic hit, Francis and his team, they had to pivot, on a dime to really enable remote work. And they tried a couple of things that weren't quite working. And Resilio really helped them to do this and get all their contributors remote, but also in a non-disruptive way that let them just keep using their tools and infrastructure that they've already got, like Pro Tools, storage systems that they've bought, networks that they've bought. And I think what we're really excited at Resilio is we're actually doing quite a bit with Skywalker on the partnership front as well. And, I think in future webinars, we might be talking more about how we're working together. But I think with that, Josh, I'd like to hand it over to you, and maybe you can walk us through some of the challenges and get into remote work.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. So thanks everybody for taking the time to join us. I'm going to take you through some typical sort of challenges and scenarios that our customers who are coming to us for help with remote work scenarios, what they're typically seeing. Customers come to us in all sort of different states, and they've got different use cases, different situations of how they're doing things today, and how they'd like to be able to share data and collaborate for remote work. We tried to sort of boil it down into a few different main categories. I just want to walk you through them, see if you can sort of identify yourself or your company and where you guys might be in any of these stages, or if you experience any of these challenges. But remote work is not an easy problem to solve. It's at least at scale or with any size of data set. There are plenty of sort of consumer level tools out there that help small teams collaborate. You think of things like Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive, and things like this that are designed for kind of smaller teams or certainly smaller data sets, smaller file sizes. But most enterprises are not using those tools. Some smaller teams, mid-sized teams use those tools. Enterprises are typically having users VPN in. They spend big bucks on VPN hardware and licensing, and kind of jack up the bandwidth capability of their primary link to their data center, and they have users VPN in, and mount SMB shares over a VPN link over the internet. And it's high latency, and it's really not a great experience. So you've got these sort of different scenarios. Some people are all remote, working from home 100% of the time. Sometimes you've got people that are sort of hybrid. They're working from home, a few days a week, and in the office a few days a week. Sometimes they're hopping between offices. Sometimes it's a production team, and they're going to be out on site for 3 weeks doing this project, and then they're going to move to some other site and do another project for 6 weeks or something. So you got all these various scenarios. Sometimes you don't control the type of network that your users are going to be using. Users don't always have access to great broadband at home. If they're traveling, who knows what they're going to get with hotel Wi-Fi or airport Wi-Fi or 3G, 4G, 5G, who knows? And so you need a tool that can handle whatever networking conditions you can throw at it and perform well, and sort of overcome any of those challenges, and not turn into support tickets, and not turn into, oh, it's just too slow, we just can't do this, we got to change our plans. You got to avoid that at all costs. A lot of a lot of tools are not optimized for big files, and a lot of our customers, are dealing with typical office type documents, PDFs and Word documents and spreadsheets and things like that. But in the media and entertainment space and the gaming space, for instance, and some life sciences uh, customers, they're dealing with very, very large files, raw video assets, or even transcoded video or audio, or any kind of media, any kind of 3D scans that some of our customers do of big buildings out on location, or geological data. These are huge files, and most of these, or really all of all of these tools that are kind of focused on syncing and sharing, just cannot handle these huge files. They might for a little while, but they will definitely fall down as you scale or grow even larger. And then a lot of our companies come to us because the data has been so big and they haven't had a solution that could scale or handle the performance requirements, and so they end up shipping drives. They FedEx an external 8 terabyte drive, or
True.
20 terabyte drive, and it goes to one person's house. It comes back, and it's like this maze of what we used to call sneaker net back in the days of like physically shipping drives. And it's risky for a number of reasons. It's not necessarily the fastest way to get data from point A to point B if you've got a tool that can handle it reliably, syncing over the network. And all those various factors lead to unpredictable sort of hard costs, soft costs. Typically, you end up sort of trying to rapidly scale up the infrastructure that they purchased in order to handle a big change. Like Jason mentioned, the sort of the COVID story. This was a almost universal theme among customers, where they had sized their VPNs to handle, a small subset of their workforce, maybe 10% of their workforce working remotely. And they sized their link for that. And now all of a sudden you got 100% of your workforce working remotely, and it becomes an impossible solution. It just falls down, can't keep up. And so you need a tool that's going to be flexible, that's not going to hit you with unexpected costs to try to scale your infrastructure to overcome, some scaling challenge. And you don't want users opening up support tickets every day because their file's missing, or their file's corrupt, or it's taking way too long to sync this. Anyway, these are common challenges among our customers that we try to help solve. And different customers are in sort of different states when it comes to the locality of their data. Where's their data living, where they need it to be. Some customers have big storage arrays that they've put in their data center or in their studio, and all their data is centrally located, and they need to replicate it. Maybe they've got a studio on the East Coast, a studio on the West Coast, or a data center in the central region. Maybe they want to sync to cloud, but they want 2 copies of the data for whatever reason, whether it's sort of remote collaboration between 2 offices or 2 branches. Maybe it's disaster recovery. Whatever it is, point-to-point replication is a very common thing. Most people have it in some form, whether it's storage-based replication or cloud replication, something like this. So very simple to understand. But when it comes to collaboration and sort of scaling collaboration, a lot of times you've got this hub and spoke architecture. And this is a very small hub and spoke architecture with just 1 hub and 2 remotes. But hub and spoke architectures can get complex and large. We've got customers with not just 1 hub, but kind of 3 hubs globally, and not 2 remotes, but 20,000 remote restaurants, for instance, or remotes, bank branch locations, something like this. And so this hub and spoke architecture becomes it can scale to be pretty large, but most customers are, they've got 1 main office or 1 main studio, and maybe some smaller studios or smaller branches. It could also be something like the solutions that I mentioned earlier, Dropbox or Google Drive, where you've got remote workers, whether they're in an office or at home. But the flow of the data is never directly between the collaborators. It's always up to the cloud and back down, or up to the central server and back down. And so it's a sort of multi-hop situation where you've got a central point of failure, you've got you know, a chokehold or a choke point on that central hub, the link or the server or the storage, and so when you need to scale or make this more highly available, this hub and spoke architecture ends up not accommodating all your needs. And so what you really want to get to is more of a mesh architecture where you've got or peer-to-peer architecture where all of the peers or all of the systems are all able to communicate directly with each other. There is no central choke point or central point of failure. All of the systems are all participating in serving data to each other and getting data from each other. Whether it's you know, proactively, you're sort of proactively keeping full copies of data in sync, or if it's on demand syncing, where which is really common in the remote work scenario, where you know, users aren't going to sync terabytes and terabytes of data to their laptop at home, but they still need access to all the, you know, 100 terabytes of data that's on the server in the data center or in the studio. So we need to give them on-demand access to it. And, you know, maybe it's a small team collaborating on project ABC, and, you know, they're accessing a lot of the same files while they're working on that project for 3 weeks. And wouldn't it be nice if they could collaborate directly and sync files directly with each other, in addition, of course, to syncing with you know, the big powerful server in the central office. So this is where we try to take our customers to this mesh peer-to-peer architecture for a number of reasons. One is performance and scale. You know, this scales incredibly well. You can just keep adding additional systems or additional users, and everything just kind of keeps getting better and better, faster, more highly available. But scalability, of course, is key. High availability is key. Like I mentioned, if any one of these sites goes down, or any one of these systems goes down, or their internet connection gets cut, it's totally okay. All the other peers can keep communicating, keep syncing, just like nothing happened. And then when that one does eventually come back up, all the others will sort of contribute little chunks of data to get it back in sync automatically with no intervention required. It just works. And so for these reasons, you know, scale, performance, high availability, this peer-to-peer architecture is really where we're trying to take customers to alleviate all these common problems that appear with remote work. And so Resilio Connect is our solution for this, and Resilio Connect is really kind of a simple solution. You know, it is it's not a big data management platform, right, that's trying to do all things and be all things for your data. It's not trying to be your archiving system and your backup system, and, you know, and your data replicator, and, you know, do all these various things with your data. We're laser focused on being the absolute best at one thing, and that's syncing data, getting your data where you need it to be on time, reliably, et cetera, securely. And it's a very simple solution. There's really only two parts. There's a management console, which is you're seeing a little screenshot of the user interface to the management console here. The management console is sort of where the administrators come to configure things, set up the synchronization jobs, and control how data flows. And you come here to monitor things, so you can see some statistics here, and errors and alerts, things like that. But the point is, you've got this central management console where you can always see what's going on. You know where your data is, and how it's syncing. Is it in sync? Did you have any errors or problems? You can have it send you alerts. You can see what each agent is doing. You know, has agent number 3 actually synced all the files in this job, or is it still in process? If it's still in process, which files has it synced successfully, and which ones are syncing right now, this very second, and who's it syncing with, and which ones are in queue to be synced next, and what's the ETA till it's going to be synced. So you get a ton of insight because we provide all this instrumentation, so you can see exactly what's going on at various levels within your system. Now, this interface, importantly, is really just for the administrators. End users are just running the second part of the solution, which is the agent software. And the agent software is is the piece that actually does all the heavy lifting, right? It's the one that's actually data. They're syncing data with other agents, and you can have any number of agents in your environment. And so, some agents might be servers, they might be laptops or desktops, they might be a NAS device, like a Synology or a QNAP or something like that. It might be something in the cloud. But the point is, you can sync between these agents, any types of agents, any operating system, any type of device, any type of storage platform, to get your data where you need it to go. So you have lots of these agents, and you get this one management console. And the importantly for the end users for remote work, it's important that remote work sync solutions be dead simple. You can't ask your users to all learn some new way to interact with their files, or it just won't get adopted, and it'll cause a bunch of problems. And so with Resilio, there actually by default is no there really is no user interface, or no new way for end users to have to learn how to work with their files. Files just show up in the file system, and users work on them like they always have, and they sync sort of on demand in the background. And you're going to see a little bit of that when John gets into the demo. But there's some key features here that are important for remote workers. For instance, selective sync. So there's some advantages to our solution, and selective sync is one of these that you'll get to see in the demo. But like I mentioned, simplicity is really key. You can't have a complicated, check-in, check-out system. Otherwise, your users are going to hate dealing with it. So it needs to be dead simple. You don't want them, ideally, you don't want them to have to learn anything new at all, right? It should be totally natural. But it needs to work, right? So it needs to handle, Jim closing the lid on his laptop for 5 minutes, and so the connection goes down while he was in the middle of syncing a file. And when he opens his lid again, it comes back online. You need it to pick right back up and start syncing right where it was in the middle of that file, and not have to resync data. It needs to work reliably. You need to detect data corruption in flight and correct it at the chunk level, not have to resync a whole file, for instance. When you know you're going to be offline, you're going out on a road trip or something, and you need to be able to work, while you're sitting in the back of the Uber, or on the train or something. You need to be able to pull those files down proactively so they're on your laptop and you can be working on them. And then when you get back online, have them pick up and sync, right? You need security. You got to, it's just a non-starter to be able to sync without encryption today. And VPNs are just another step in that process of making things complicated and costly. And so we do encryption end to end between all the agents right out of the box. So you don't need VPNs or private links. You can sync this right over the public internet. It's very secure. And you need this to be fast and predictable, of course, and work with the infrastructure that you've already invested in, your storage, your servers, your cloud infrastructure. You might have some Macs and some Windows laptops. You need it to work with the stuff you already have. And importantly, sort of different than other solutions that are out on the market, you need it typically, a lot of our customers really need this to work well with large files, large data sets, files that might be multiple terabytes in size or tens of gigabytes in size, hundreds of gigabytes. Our solution doesn't have any size limits. You can sync enormous files, as large as your file system can support on whatever operating system you're on. We can sync those files, no problem. And we can do it efficiently because we actually sync data at the chunk level. We break files down in little chunks. And there's a bunch of advantages to that, but one of them is that we can handle enormous files very efficiently. And you need to, like I mentioned, selective sync, you need to be able to give your laptop users access to hundreds of terabytes or petabytes of data that live in the cloud or on your central server, so that they can sync it on demand for the projects or the assets that they need access to at any one point in time, without having to sync it all locally. And you got to be efficient and enable those types of those use cases that just weren't possible before because there wasn't enough bandwidth. And users are looking for remote work because that's kind of partially a new reality, right? People started working remotely, started working from home, and they found out, oh, we can still, get our work done. And it's maybe not all bad way of working. Maybe it's not all bad to be hybrid, or um, maybe you just always have been remote, but you need to be able to collaborate on the same data with your colleagues or your peers or partner organizations. And this is a key feature or a key benefit that Resilio Connect provides, is the ability to collaborate reliably and quickly, and get data from point A to point B. It's not just about collaboration, remote work. It can also be about things like remote ingest. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But you need a solution that's not going to lock you into a particular set of infrastructure or a particular software stack, or a particular cloud provider, particular storage provider. You need flexibility. Your data is going to hopefully outlive all those physical assets, and you need to be able to get the data from point A to point B, regardless of which vendor is point A and which vendor is point B. It's key to have agility. And of course, I mentioned security already, but there's kind of three buckets of use cases that we typically are seeing from our customers. Collaboration, I've mentioned a few times. There's a few different variations of that. Remote offices, that's another type of remote work, different than individuals working from home, where it's like one person per location. Remote office, you might have tens or hundreds of people in a smaller location than what your main location is, and you need to do that efficiently as well. And then this remote ingest is really popular and seems to be gaining popularity as people sort of discover what Resilio Connect is capable of. And so the first one, collaboration, we've already talked about working from home. It's very simple, right? You're installing Resilio agents on end user laptops or desktops and allowing them to sync with some central server, and sync on demand, not just with that central server, but also with each other. Because again, we've got that peer-to-peer architecture so that we can sync data really quickly. This has the effect of really speeding up the distribution or the synchronization of data to multiple remote workers. And it sort of takes load off of that central server and off of that central network connection, so you can sort of do more with less, which is important as prices for seems like everything keep rising today. You need to be able to do more with the bandwidth that you have or the server that you have, and not overrun it. Hybrid is becoming popular now as companies start to bring people back into the office, maybe partially. So some days they're working from home, some days they're coming into the office. Maybe you got remote offices, and we do this really well because we're not changing the way users access data if they're at home versus if they're in the office. The Resilio syncs regardless of the network. When it gets into the office, it'll sync over the LAN or over Wi-Fi really fast. When it's at home, it's going to sync over the internet. And the agents sort of auto detect this, and they're constantly sort of reevaluating how they should be communicating with their peers. And so there is no change for an end user to bring their laptop from home to the office and vice versa. It just keeps working the same way it always has. They don't have to do anything different. They don't have to change the mode. It just works. And in this same way, I want to point this out, in the same way that you want your laptop users to be able to see all of the data, the hundreds of terabytes of data that you might have in the central server, but not necessarily sync it all until they need it, so you want to sync it on demand. You can do the same thing with a remote office, which a lot of people don't consider, you don't think about. You think, oh, I've got 100 terabytes in my central data center, and if I want to get all that data to my small remote office where I've got 10 users, I don't want to buy another 100 terabyte SAN or 100 terabyte NAS or 100 terabyte server and sync all 100 terabytes of that data. I don't need it. I just need some portion of it, some subset of it. And what's nice is with Resilio and this transparent selective sync feature, you can set a server up with that same feature, and it will on demand sync just the files and folders that it needs or its users request, so that you can be much more efficient with the infrastructure that you're putting out at these remote smaller branches. Okay, so it's a great feature, works in both scenarios. And then a lot of companies are moving to the cloud, or or they're already all in the cloud and they've got all their data stored up in AWS or Google or Azure or something like that, Wasabi, whatever. And you need to provide remote access to your users. Maybe that's you and you're 100% remote today. You just need a better and more reliable way to do it. Some companies are on-prem today and they want to move to the cloud. We can help you migrate your data because our tool is really good at syncing data. So we can help you sync. Maybe you want to keep sort of a hybrid approach where you've got both a copy on-prem and a copy in the cloud, and you want to keep them in sync. We can do that. Maybe you're multi-cloud. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. You don't want all your data just to live in AWS. You want a second copy in Google or Azure or something. We can sync to as many cloud providers as you want. So we give you ultimate flexibility for where your data is going to go. And I mentioned this storage gateway or this caching gateway. That's the feature I was just talking about with the selective sync at a remote office. Allow you to buy a smaller server or smaller storage array in those remote locations, but still provide access to all the same data. It's a great feature, very powerful feature. Sometimes you've just got some big Synology or some big NAS device in that app, or Isilon or Cumulo scale out NAS in your main data center, and you need to sync that to another one, or you need to sync it to you need to sync the Cumulo to an Isilon, or sometimes some of our larger media and entertainment customers, they might have a post-production editor and he needs to sync a lot of data. And so, the transparent selective sync isn't even enough. So he's going to put an 8-bay Synology in his home office. And we want to be able to sync directly to that Synology back to the big enterprise server that's in the core office or in the cloud. So again, I may be hitting on this a little bit too much, but the point is you can sync your data to any device, anywhere, any storage platform, and storage synchronization is a big one. So this one, I just want to touch on remote ingest because this is really important and seems to be gaining in popularity with our customers. So imagine scenarios where you are a drone operator, right? And you've got drone pilots out there operating drones that are collecting video footage, collecting photos, collecting sensor data, and you need to get that data from the field, right? You need to grab the data off the drone and get it ingested to your cloud storage so that your big data analytics workflow can process those images and process that video and make operational decisions based on the data you're getting from the field. It's important to a company like that to be able to get the data from the field into their core infrastructure so they can do all their business critical processes with it. But it's not data that needs to be synced. You're not really collaborating with this data. It's just data you're collecting remotely, and you need to ingest it really fast and reliably. And then once it's ingested, you wipe it off of the field system so that you can collect more data. This is also, you can imagine if you're a movie studio, and you're shooting video on location or recording audio on location, and you just, you need to get it from on location into the studio or into the data center so you can edit it and let your artists or editors work their magic on it. But again, it's not data that needs to stay in the field. You just need to get it in as fast as possible and automate that process, make it really reliable, and avoid having to, say, ship a hard drive or a collection of hard drives and hope nothing happens, right? So this remote ingest capability is really important to a lot of companies who operate like that and need to get data from the field. Maybe it's a ship that's out in the ocean with a bunch of sensors, and you're collecting sensor data. You need to get that back in so you can make operational decisions. All kinds of reasons why you might need to do this remote ingest. And it's kind of similar to remote work, and that's why we kind of lump it in here in the same presentation. It's very popular. And so now I feel like I've talked a lot and talked fast, so I'm gonna pause and turn it over to John, who is on our customer solutions engineering team. He works with customers every day to implement Resilio Connect and configure it to solve their actual business challenges and their technology challenges. And he's going to show you just a little bit of a sort of a glimpse of what you might see or what you might expect in a remote work scenario. So John, I'll stop talking and let you take it away.
Okay, Jason, thank you. All right. So again, it's a real privilege for me to demonstrate Resilio Connect for a remote use case. And picture the scenario as Josh mentioned. He mentioned that you have a large amount of data, perhaps on a Windows share, right? A file server that you want to give access to remote users, but they have a problem. They don't have tons of terabytes on their hard drive or space to download that file. So what you're seeing now is you're seeing the Resilio Management Console, and this is where you can actually solve that issue for your end users. If you're an existing Connect user, great. Thank you. We appreciate your business. If you're just looking at Resilio Connect, well, we hope this demonstration will be beneficial. And realize that if you're an existing customer, you have selective sync, transparent selective sync, aka TSS, already built into the product. All you would need is to provide your remote users, whether it be Mac or Windows, with a desktop agent. They connect back into the management console, and you can set up a selective sync job. And this is where you actually see what's happening within the management console. Just an overall view of some of the data that's been transferred. You have general statistics here in your overall page. You can actually see what the optimization for your network has been over the course of 24 hours or all time. And scrolling down, you can see that it gives you a list of some of the agents. We have 5 agents connected to this management console. If we had any jobs running, they would show up here. And of course, you get some neat barcode statistics, average speed of their transfer of the data. You have bytes transferred. And you can actually manipulate this by a day, by a week, by a month. You can change it here and actually get different metrics on your data. Files transferred. This is important. Network disconnects. If you're working with remote users, sometimes they may lose connectivity from their home, or they may, just shut down their PC, and you want to know why they get disconnected. You can actually show up here, which is a nice feature to have. So let's go a little bit further into selective sync and actually create a job, so you can actually see what it would look like on an end user's perspective, as well as the management console. So we'll go to configure jobs. We'll create a new job. We'll create a synchronization job. This is what we're interested in. I'm going to call it, let's call it webinar remote users. And we click next. Now we're going to go into our agent details. This is important. Let's take a minute to work with this, because this is actually where you turn on selective sync. So for my Windows Prem server, which is like my source, is my file server back at the data center in my office, I'm going to go ahead and browse to where my data actually lives. Go to my agent, go to my D drive. It's under projects. Selected that. We'll save it. Now we have 2 remote users. We have Sally's Windows desktop. We're going to choose her. And this is where you turn on selective sync. Wow. Not bad, right? Not hard at all. And it's going to choose her default path, which is fine. John, on the other hand, he has a MacBook Pro, selective sync, but he's a little more difficult. He doesn't want it to go there. He says he can't find it. It's a pain in the neck. So what we're going to do is we're going to check a box that says Ask User. And this is a neat feature because it allows the user to take that sync job, this data that we're syncing to them, and save it wherever they want on their device, which is a very nice feature. And a lot of people like it. John here, he's a little tougher than Sally. He wants to keep his own data where he wants. If we hit next, this is a reference agent detail. This is if you're using or syncing permissions. It doesn't really apply here. We're just going to let them choose what they want. And our priority job is set, no problem. Our default agent profile is set. We like it. Everything looks good. If we had an SMTP service set up, we can set up notifications saying, hey, this job finished with errors, or this job completed successfully. Nothing there. We'll just keep going. And this is a very nice section because it allows you to actually kind of look and review what you set up for your job. As you can see here, we have our Windows Prem server. This is our path. We have Sally's desktop. She's got Selective Sync on. There's her path. And of course, John has his MacBook set up and Selective Sync turned on. So once we hit save, the job will now start to sync. We go to job runs. We can look at the job. Overall view, we see we got 2 gigabytes. It can be 200, 2 terabytes, whatever case it is. It'll give you the size here. We look at their agents. We see on our Windows Prem, listen, it's fully sunk here. It is synced up to the max with our 14 files at 2 gigs. But you notice that the other end users, the remote users, don't have anything. And that's because they haven't chosen any files to sync. Let me show Sally's desktop. Go ahead and connect to her. This is the UI, of course. If you open it up, it'll just appear to have her Windows Explorer, and you can actually turn off the GUI if the users don't need it. This is what she would actually see. Her files are in a pointer-like state, so she doesn't have any files delivered. They're just pointers ready for her to actually download those files. And of course, John, remember him, he was a little difficult. Do you see on his UI here, he has to choose the path. So we'll go ahead and click there and actually find his path. Here you go, John's data is here. And once this syncs, he'll be able to now see the files, see those pointers in his particular location. So we'll let that file through there. And we go back to Sally, for example. Now, this is a Windows and Mac, they're very similar, of course, but different OSs, so they respond a little bit differently, but they're very similar. If you look at the projects folder, for example, if Sally were to open up a file, for example, she wants this file, it's a pointer, it's not there yet. If she clicks on it, it'll bring up the file. This is Sally's attic. She's doing some work, I guess, on her air conditioning. Notice that she can actually edit the file she wanted, save it, no problem, and sync it back. But now if Sally wants to go ahead and save that file on her device, she can actually go here and click on always keep this file on this device, and it turns to a solid green. Now that file is on her desktop. Wherever she saved, wherever that path was, that file is there. And simply if she wants to say, okay, I'm done with this file or number of files, it can be freed. There you go. And it goes back to a pointer. Now, what about if, as Josh mentioned, what about if somebody wants to take, a whole folder and say, I want to download this whole folder, keep it for after hours work, might be my Uber, or, I won't be connected to the internet. I'll be in some cabin somewhere, but I still need these files. Well, you can right click and say, always keep on this device, and it will take the whole entire folder and actually create a local data store on your device. So in this particular case, Sally has the whole folder with all their data in it, where she can go ahead and sync the data and look at it and actually be able to work on her project, which is very nice. It could be several gigs. It depends how much space she has, but she'll know how much she's able to download, if she's able to download the whole folder. And of course, when she's done with it, all she has to do is to free up space. It goes back to the pointer. She gets the space back on her device. Now, if we look at John here, John's data, I'm going to pull up the Finder. Let me bring it down a little bit so you can see it. I'm going to get rid of the UI, and we'll just bring it up here. And same thing with John. He's able to actually see the files and folders, right? If he goes to projects on his Mac, same thing. He can open up the file. It appears here. The file version is present, meaning he can work on it and do whatever he needs to. But at the same time, he says, you know what? I got to keep this on my Mac. He goes ahead and checks the box. It changes color, denotes that the file is now on his desktop, ready to be used. Again, he can also free up space here. It'll change it back to present. Oh, let me go back here. You can free up space here, and also same deal. Mac is a little bit one more step more, and you can actually free up the space. And really, that's it's a very straightforward, very easy approach, but yet, as Josh mentioned, very secure and very usable, and versatile in the actual remote worker space. There's one other thing I wanted to show you that I really wanted to bring this point home, is this file that's in the sync remote user directory is a 2 GB test file. Now this could be 2 gig, 20 gig, 200 gig, whatever the file system will allow the person to deliver this file to. But I just want to show you that if I go ahead and force that file to change, let me bring up my source server here. Go ahead and bring it up. You'll see that this is actually the remote. This is actually my server where the data resides. I'm going to go ahead and run just a quick test. I'm going to simulate somebody editing a large file, right? So it's 2 gigs now. I'm going to shrink it down to 1 gig. And you can see that we'll just change the rights of the file. We'll just change the blocks. Automatically, it syncs. She has the appropriate file. So it's just demonstrating that we, as Josh mentioned, we really do an efficient job of just syncing the delta changes to the actual file. And that it represents not only in Windows, but of course in Mac. And we're able to open this up and see that that file test, again, is, even though it says 2 gigs, it's really just 1 gig. So Resilio is a very powerful remote use case software. TSS is an excellent way for remote editors, remote users who need to deal with large amount of files but don't have the space, want to do it efficiently and of course safely, securely, and have that file system available to them at any time. So that was my demo. I appreciate your time and allowing me to demo it for you. And Joshua or Jason, I'll take it back to you.
Great. Thank you, sir. That was a great demo. So why don't we take a few minutes and answer some questions that are coming in. We've got quite a few streaming in. This first one has to do with a NIST 800 certification. I don't know the answer to that. I know that we recently got an SOC2 Type 1 cert. So Tim, we might have to get back to you on that one. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that.
I do not. I'm not sure on that. I would have to research that as well.
Yeah. And then the other one had to do with job prioritization. And I know that we can prioritize around, older versus newer files and file extensions. Anything we wanted to add to that?
Yeah, we should fill in the gaps on that one. So yeah, there are lots of ways to customize and prioritize things with Resilio. And John, fill in gaps if I leave them. But basically, with Resilio, we have a concept of a job, and you can have a job working on some data set, right? Some project A might be a job, project B might be a job, and you can control which agents are going to participate and sync the data with those jobs. And so the broadest way you can prioritize is to have different jobs with different priorities. So project A has a higher priority than project B. And so if something changes in project A, it'll get all the bandwidth, and project B waits, right, until there's bandwidth available. So that's the broad way, right? Now within a job, you can also do prioritization in a few ways, and you can prioritize based on recency of change. I only want to pay attention to files that have changed in the last 24 hours, or I want to ignore files that haven't been changed in some certain period of time. I can build whitelists or blacklists to exclude or include certain files. I can do all kinds of things like that. There's a sort of a big list of things. But kind of interestingly, in the past 6 months or a year, we had a customer come to us that had a kind of a unique situation where they operate race cars. You'd probably know the name if I mentioned it, but they do F1 racing, and they are on a race day, they're collecting all this sensor data from the car, and it's really important for them to be able to get this sensor data off the car and onto some local device near the track, but importantly to then get that data to their data center so they can analyze it with their machine learning solutions and make tweaks or changes or operational decisions. And of course, certain data is way more important for that to get done faster than others. And so we actually worked with that customer to develop a feature to allow them to on demand prioritize a certain file based on, I think, the file name of it, to where anytime a file name with this particular profile landed on the file system, all the other synchronizations or all the other transfers got deprioritized so that one could go as fast as possible. So I guess the point is the ways in which you can prioritize different synchronization jobs or traffic is there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, and you can get very granular control over how you prioritize certain files if you want to. It's kind of an interesting project that we did.
Great.
Did I leave anything out?
No, I think, yeah, you got everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, there's another one here from Miroslav, and I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to try to paraphrase. You've got a file share. You've got two connections accessing that. One does not have a Resilio agent. Let's just say it's a SMB mount to a UNC file share, and they're changing files. And then you've got a Resilio agent who is connected to that same data. So to be exact, he says, adding files directly to storage without using. So I think what he's saying is there any difference? Meaning, changes made through Resilio can still be seen by other, to the share, can still be seen by other users who don't run Resilio.
Of course.
And vice versa, when you're changing data, because it's all open format, right? You're changing files to the share, Resilio picks those up as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our agent listens for file system notifications from the file system. And so if that's on a Windows or Linux server, we'll get those directly from the server, right? From the OS. If it's on, I happen to know that in this case, it's a big enterprise storage array, which also does support real-time file system notifications. So we listen to those file system notifications regardless of where they come from, and we'll sync in real time. But yeah, if you're syncing to a big SMB share or an NFS share or something like that, those files are available to be viewed, edited, written by any other device which is accessing that share, regardless of whether they're using Resilio or not. So yeah, it's that's why that remote office sort of caching capability that I talked about is so powerful, because you can install an agent on, say, a small Windows file server or something, and maybe it has 20 terabytes of capacity, whereas really you've got 100 terabytes of data back in your main location. You can just set it to sort of cache those files on demand, and you're sharing that data out via SMB, for instance, to all your users that are local in that location. So it makes it a really powerful way to provide access to a bunch of users in a smaller remote or branch office.
And there's another one that just came in here. Can you limit upload, download bandwidth on the agents based on time of day or based on if specific apps are active running on the user's system?
Hey, can I show that real quick? I'll just, I have the UI here. Let me go ahead and just.
Let me stop sharing so you can.
Okay. I think this will answer quite nicely. So on the Resilio UI, through the management console, as a administrator, you can actually set the limit, right? Here's a scheduler that you can actually time or day, but also you can set the global limit, upload and download speed for that particular agent. So if their home network, they're constricted with a certain bandwidth limitation, and they say Resilio is pulling everything, I need to limit that. You could do it right here and actually set it on a schedule. So if other applications are running, you can make sure that it's not going to interfere. So I thought it'd be nice just to show it. It's right in the UI, and it's a nice feature, and it works along greatly with the bandwidth schedule that's set per agents in the management console as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So great. So yeah, you can set it. The administrator can control it all in the management console, or if you want to, you can allow your users to create their own schedules, which is what John just showed. Yeah. So it's, again, very flexible. Now, the second part of that question, though, Jason, would you mind repeating the last part of that question?
So based on time of day, you've covered upload, download, you've covered, or based on if a specific apps are active running on the user's system.
Mm.
So I'm not sure how that would relate.
That one, John, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we can do that sort of out of the box. Maybe there's a custom solution we could work with a customer on to help them with that.
Yeah, I think we can, but it's not a setting that we can just poke through the UI.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, John.
And then there was another question that came in around CPU load. What affects CPU load
Yes.
for Resilio? For example, numbers of syncing clients.
It's a great question. Because this is a big problem, I think, with a lot of solutions out there. If you're dealing with large data sets, if you reboot a box, for instance, and it comes back up and it has to sort of walk the file system again and rehash all the files again, and it can really pound on your CPU and your disk for a long time if it's a big data set. And customers who've tried us out on those same data sets find out and are pretty happy that we don't do that after every reboot, for instance. It's very, is it fair to say, Jason, it's or John, it's extremely rare that we have to go rehash everything. It would be a big event if we had to go rehash everything and pound on your CPU and disk. We do have to do it once, right? So the first time you install it, we do need to go through and understand what's on the file system. But after that, it's sort of it's happening as you're making changes and as as it's going. So it's very minimal, the CPU impact and disk impact that we provide. Certain circumstances, if you're trying to use very advanced features like delta detection, and you have just huge files and your change rate of data is very high, that can affect things. So our engineers, like John and others on his team, if you wanted to try this out, we could sort of work with you, and we understand sort of the settings that you need to tweak in order to optimize for performance. And so we can help walk you through it. But the quick answer and the short answer is Resilio does not suffer from this very common problem with other solutions. Not to say that we can't be CPU intensive. It all depends, like everything in IT, but we have ways to help you optimize it.
So we're nearing the end of the hour. There's one last question here I think we should answer. It's from Todd. Does the server side run on our server or in the cloud?
Good question. So when you say server, I assume he means management console. And the management so it's important to know about Resilio that Resilio is not a software as a service solution. In other words, Resilio doesn't host any part of the solution for customers. We don't want access to your data. We don't want access to your systems. So it's a solution that's completely hosted by you, the customer. And so that includes the management console and the agents. And so it's important that we don't have access to it. Now we can help you set something up in the cloud if you want to run it in the cloud. You can run it wherever you want, but it's going to run on your infrastructure, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, that you control. Okay.
Righty. I think with that, let's wrap it up. I believe that we're out of time. It's 10:59. So I want to thank everyone for joining in again. And John, great demo. And Josh, thank you for presenting. And folks, please get in touch. Josh, is there anything you want to say about getting in touch and how to take it to the next step?
Yeah, please. If you're interested in talking to us more, you can hop to our website and schedule a demo with us or a conversation with somebody on our sales team. You might talk to me or one of my colleagues. And we'll kind of take you through a little bit more in depth and talk about your environment and what challenges you're trying to solve. And we offer free trials. So if you want to test this out in your environment, get in touch with us that same way. And the link's right here on the bottom right of the screen. You can find it easily on our website. Get in touch with us and we'll schedule a team, and you'll get John or one of his peers on the engineering team to help you get this installed quickly. It takes less than an hour to get everything set up and going. And you can test it out for a few weeks and kick the tires and see if it's going to meet your needs.
Well, all right. Well, with that, thank you all for attending, and we hope to speak with you soon.